All right. Well, welcome to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. And today is Wednesday, August the 21st, 2019. I am going to, when I have an opportunity, to take part of yesterday's show and put it on in the special MP3s of radio shows. So it may be a day or two before I get that out there. But that was excellent processing, and thank you all for calling in. That's what we mean by this makes it your show, and everybody benefits from it. Welcome, Michael.
Yeah, I've heard from several people that yesterday was, especially the work that Yolanda did. That was awesome. Yolanda was a home run for several people. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And also, I want to thank you. We haven't mentioned in a while the fact that it was Susan Darnell who came up with the idea of starting a fundraiser for her birthday. And we had trouble setting that up, so Jeannie went ahead and set it up directly on Facebook. And just want to thank everybody for the support. I'm actually back to diligently working on writing a new ebook that will be entitled The End of Suffering. Why is this happening to me again? Subtitled The End of Suffering. We've got as a result of your kind gifts, we do have the funding to go ahead and get ready to publish that. So we'll be watching for details. It's going to be an ebook with lots of links in it that tells the whole story of forgiveness. And we'll be setting it up so that it goes on Amazon, and we'll let everybody know, and we'll ask everybody to please synchronize your purchasing of the book if you choose to do that. And we're going to keep it, seeing as how we don't have printing expenses and such, we just have the publishing end of it. We're going to keep it inexpensive, like the book's going to be. I think we're going to go. I was talking to Patrick McGann. I was actually going to go with $2.99, but Patrick suggested going with $3.33. So I think the book's going to be $3.33, and we'll invite everybody to. When we get that ready to rock, we'll be letting you know. And if you buy it all on the same day, that's going to give it a big boost on Amazon so that it gets more visibility and gets out there into more hands. So thank you all for your kind donations on the Facebook donation site. And thank you, Susan Darnell, for initiating that idea and getting that going. It's always something that I'm kind of reticent to do. It's like, if people are going to jump in and support, well, we'll just let them do it. So thank you for that boost and putting that out there. And beyond that, Jeannie, do we have anything happening in the chat room or anything happening in the phone queue?
No, all is quiet on the home front.
Okay, well, excuse me for being a little hoarse, but today I want to talk a little bit about resonance and gravity, and how behavior, in a sense, is almost gravity-driven, and not the kind of gravity that attracts us to the Earth, but a different kind of gravity. And so I want to talk a little bit about the idea of resonance, and remembering that the definition of resonance is that when two energy fields are in tune or in harmony with each other, there's an exchange of information between them. The stronger field sets up an energy that, because of the attunement or the resonance, there's a transfer of that stronger energy field to the weaker. As a result, the weaker one is strengthened. Now, on a smaller scale, the weaker field is also vibrating and setting up some resonance with the stronger field, but that's kind of negligible at this point. Primary thing we want to get across is that resonance here creates motion. And so if I hit a middle C tuning fork on a desk, and I put it near a second middle C tuning fork, that second middle C tuning fork, because of resonance, is going to go into motion. I could have 10,000 other tuning forks, A's and B's and D's and F's, not one speck of motion in any of those tuning forks, only the one that's in resonance. If I have a baby grand piano, and I strike out a middle C on that baby grand, then I open a second baby grand sitting beside it and take a look inside. Hundreds of strings. I don't even know how many strings in a piano, but a lot of them. Julie out in Oregon there could probably tell us how many strings, but if I look inside the second baby grand, the only strings that are going to be moving will be the ones associated with the middle C. Now, the motion is in the internal motion in each of those items, the middle C tuning forks, the two baby grand pianos. And there's an internal resonance that happens in each one of us in response to an energy that is similar or moving in another person. Even if there's no awareness of it, even if there's nothing spoken, no visible movement whatsoever, all one has to do to cause motion in another is have within them a frequency moving, and by definition, everything is energy. So energy is motion by definition. If there was no motion, there'd be no energy. So just the simple holding of a thought, the only thing we know of that can stop the high energy wave that leaves the mind when we think a thought is another set of brain cells that's in resonance or in tune with that thought. So someone who has a thought of beauty and sweetness and love, by holding that energy, they're literally setting up a field, and it will tend to set up that same field in another. And it will tend to create an inclination toward behavior in that second person. It will tend to draw out behaviors based in the matching energy. So that's the law of resonance. A person who holds a thought based in hate, fear, sadness, grief, sets up a similar resonance in the brain cells of anyone nearby that has that content within their minds. The second middle C tuning fork doesn't have a choice as to whether or not it's going to vibrate. You set up that primary resonance in that first tuning fork, and you put it in the field of a matching fork or 10,000 matching tuning forks, and 10,000 matching tuning forks are going to start to move, however perceptible or imperceptible they are. If I actually touch the first tuning fork to the second one, that second tuning fork is really going to start to have much more visible motion. And it's similar in the human realm. The thing that we want to point out here is that motion in the human realm is not only the energy that moves within us, but what we could call a gravitational force that draws us to, or draws another to us, who has the matching tuning fork. The culture has a saying for that. It's birds of a feather flock together. What does that mean? That means that people who have similar resonance will tend to find each other. They will tend to move into each other's space. Motion is created through resonance, and we could call that a form of gravity. That we're drawn to people through that energetic force called gravity. Now, many people who play the game, yesterday part of our show was about, being controlled, the idea of being controlled. And there's so many people, especially angry people, who just abhor being controlled, abhor others running their lives. And yet they have no idea where their own inclinations come from. We've got that line in the wake-up sheet that says in step 4, when I choose love, it wakes up the love in everyone. When I choose to resonate to the tuning fork love, it tends to move that state of being in everyone. And that means everyone, because that is present in everyone. So we create inclinations in each other. The person who walks around carrying rage and fear and grief and pain and trauma and upset sets up a field in others that oftentimes against one's own. Have you ever done something and you say afterward, God, why did I do that? I didn't want to do that. Did you know? that the motion created by that other person, that is the resonance by that very frequency held in another mind. Excuse my hoarse throat today, I'm in a bit of a healing crisis. So that motion set up in the brain cells of the primary person, let's say it's anger, resonates the brain cells of anger in another person. And that creates the inclination toward behavior. And here's the angry person being controlled by some other angry person, a person who, if they were aware that it was this other person controlling them, would never do that behavior, and maybe would never naturally do that behavior anyway. And for me, this points out the importance of forgiveness, because forgiveness is how I transmute or change the frequencies of whatever I hold within me. When I apply forgiveness, I literally remove the influence that the hostility and fear in others have upon me. And the gravitational pull, the energy exchange that happens between two people, will tend to have me gravitating toward behaviors linked to what's firing within me. And that it almost creates another layer of gravity, because what then happens is I'm now going to, especially if I'm stressed, I'm now going to be more likely to automatically be attracted to do what my power person did to me that I hated the most when I'm under stress. Remember our definition of a power person. A power person is a person in your life who had more power over your life at some stage than you did. Condition one. Condition two, that person was not functioning as a human being. Our definition of a human being is love. That person was not functioning as love. That's condition two. Condition three, the person who was the object of that circumstance perceived it as survival. And it's like when we go into that survival mode, the energy field is open and it just sucks in every energy that's in the environment. No ability to refuse what's out there. And so one registers all of those energetic patterns within themselves. When one is under the influence of the internal dynamic, and remember we talked about the two pianos, it's the internal strings in the second piano that are moving. It's the internal dynamic that's moving within us that resonates or locks us into the power person. And until one understands that power person dynamic and learns to forgive it, they will be unconsciously controlled by the behaviors that they developed in relationship to their power person. So whenever you've got somebody that's under stress, whenever you've got somebody that's in upset and disturbance, you're always safe. Now, it may not be safe because they might want to take off your head or get rid of you, but you're always safe in your knowledge that you could ask the question, how did it feel when you watch a person who's under stress doing a behavior? You can always say to them, now it may not necessarily be safe because they may want to take off your head, but you can always say to them, how did it feel when your power person did that behavior to you? Always, 100% of the time, when somebody's under stress, because the behaviors that one does their whole lives long are controlled until these dynamics are exposed and honestly faced and owned. They run us. And there are only three, and I just invite you to look at your own life. There are only three behaviors possible for you to do in your life until you resolve power person dynamics. That is when you're under stress. And when there's little or no stress, notice that you do whatever you did to get along with your power person. When stress starts to build, notice that you do whatever you did to resist and survive with your power person. And then when you become ultra stressed, you'll do what your power person did to you that you hated the most. Gravity. I stand in front of someone who holds fear, rage, whatever it happens to be, If I have the matching brain cells, it starts to move in me. I have goals related to that, so I get into a stress position within myself. And now, in that stress position, the gravity of that, and it's kind of a metaphor. It's not something literal, perhaps. Maybe it is. But that gravity now inclines us toward, draws us toward, moves us in the direction of doing the behavior that the power person did to us that we hated the most. And that, I would offer, is what runs the world. Once I understand that and I begin to apply forgiveness, and remember now, forgiveness doesn't mean I'm going to let them off the hook because there's something moving in me. If I say, oh, you angry person, you resonated all this anger in me, look what you've done to me, then I'm in denial. When I pretend that they're the cause of my anger, they're the reason I'm experiencing this anger, then I'm in denial and I dissociate from the very part of my mind that I need to heal. So when I realize how that power person dynamic works, I'm under stress. It's like, I want to leave, I'm out of this conversation, I'm out of here. I know there, by that behavior, I'm under stress. And now that I'm under stress, I need to be asking myself the question, what's the behavior that I want to do here? And how did it feel when my power person did that to me? And if I'm honest with myself, most often I'm going to go into tears and I'm going to go, I just hated that. That was what I detested. And it's the opportunity to bring forward that, if you think about, celestial bodies, the earth is attracted to the moon and the moon is attracted to the earth and the sun has a gravitational field. It's like we have these energetic patterns that are set up, these gravitational fields that pull us into behavior. And until we allow ourselves to literally access that energetic dynamic within us and bring it forward in the presence of love. If I live in denial and say, well, no, that never happened to me. Well, why do you think you're doing that behavior? You know why you're doing it? Because you're under stress. You know what happens when you're under that kind of stress? You do what your power person did that you hated the most. So there's this energetic ball within me, this energetic resonance within me that draws me to be controlled by this person outside of me. Because I refuse to be responsible for what's going on inside of me. And when I stop and I take a breath and I realize that what's going on inside of me is mine, then I have the opportunity to engage in the process of forgiveness. And the process of forgiveness is the process of collapsing the current projected painful perception. And by collapsing it, dropping into the underlying dynamic, delivering it up to the presence of love, and freeing myself from it. By exposure to love, there's a literal transmutation, a change in the frequency of the energy held there. And there's the power in the core of forgiveness. And I can look back, and it's probably about 30 years ago now that I started looking at the previous 20 years of doing this work and wondering to myself, how does this work? What is it that makes this magnificent healing that I just saw happen? What is it that makes it happen? And then there's another circumstance, and it all seems about the same. And I say, but the healing didn't occur there. What's the deal? What went on? What became very clear to me was that two things had to occur, and I watched this. Once I started to observe this, and then I'd watch it over and over again, and I'd see someone who, they had an issue. Let's say we're doing an intensive. They've got an issue, and the issue is kind of like, yeah, well, I know about this issue, and I have this, and Charlie over there just resonated for me, and yeah, okay. Well, there's not going to be any healing happen in that circumstance, at least not the significant healing that could occur. But when I see Charlie do the behavior and Mary over there has this whomping rage that comes up that she had sucked in from her relationship with her power person who raged at her all the time, when that comes forward in a very real form, Not just, oh, well, I know that happened to me when I was a kid, but when I get the veil of the temple open and I get to the root of what's hidden under the surface, and I allow that which is under the surface to come forward in its full blossom. And if I or someone else in the space, that is, if I'm the one whose stuff is coming up, if I or someone else in the space is holding to the active presence of love. Now, that doesn't mean it's thinking about love or it's thinking nice thoughts or says, I want to be loving toward you, but literally is in the space of being. When that which has formulated energetically our trauma, we allow the veil to open and have direct access to that. It's a live process, and healing occurs. And you know, we can write down the instructions about how to do that, but you can't do it by reading the written instructions. You have to engage in those instructions and actually put them to work. You have to have entered into the practice of bringing forward conscious, active, present love. And as you bring forward the presence of active love, then everything starts to change. And we're here to create that kind of change, to support that kind of change, and to extend the practice, the understanding, the tools of how to do that. And, you know, the non-being mind wants that so deeply. But sadly, it oftentimes won't do what it takes. It won't enter the practice. They're in resistance to the practice. Yesterday, some conversation continued after the show via text. And one of the people who was processing the show said, well, you know, I don't particularly like doing worksheets, so what if I just breathe and I forget about those worksheets? Will that do it? Will that do the job? And my response was, I'll tell you what, I've got a car, and in the front left of the car, I have a wheel and a tire. And on the front right, I have a wheel and a tire. Which one of them do you want to ignore and resist and not use? It's like, no, the tools are there, and they're there to be used with all of the above. But there's a practice. There's an interesting passage in, I forget exactly where it's from in the scriptures. I don't have the quote. But when we're looking for, we want the instruction. We want the end result to be in writing in front of us so we can have it. But oftentimes we won't do the work it takes to produce it. So here's the passage. Now, if the ministry of death, having been engraved in letters on stones, was produced in glory. What this was produced in glory? That's referring to was doing the live action. So they're talking about Moses here. And, you know, he's got these tablets of stone. And what they're recognizing is that if you read those tablets of stone and you don't do the practice, you're now in the ministry of death. You're now going to produce death out of that. So having been engraved in letters and stones was produced in glory. In other words, it was a live process. And yesterday, if you listened to the show, you heard a lot of live process happening. That's what we want to empower everyone to be able to do for themselves and for each other. So when it says in this, engraved in letters of stones was produced in glory, was a live process, so as for the sons of Israel not to be able to look intently into the face of Moses. In other words, Moses had just gone through a process, and he was vibrant and alive, and he was lighted up. And then it says, on account of the glory of his face, which is fading. In other words, when you put it in writing instead of practice, it's in the process of dying already. It's finished. Go read that book. Go read and study that book for 1,000,000 years. And if you don't enter into process, you're involved in exactly what this quote says, the ministry of death, having been engraved in letters on stones, was produced out of a live process, was produced in glory. So that Moses was so alive, what they said is, the sons there, the men and women there, couldn't look intently into his face. He was so bright and so alive. And then, because it was engraved in stone, that's what we need. Let me sit down and write what Moses just had happened, and then I'll have it. No, it's already fading. The life process is done. So the instruction set, it's not about studying the words of those scriptures or anything else. It's about doing the work, being in the life process, so that you produce a result in glory. And that's interesting language. In this culture, it doesn't mean much. But what it's saying was it was produced as a result of the live, active presence of love, meeting the trauma that was hidden. And when that happened, everybody went, wow, we saw that result. That's awesome. Give me 5. You can't have 5 of those. You're going to have to enter into the practice, learn to use the tool for yourself, and then actually use it. Overcome your resistance to it and actually put it to work. Because the stories about it are not the thing itself, are not the process. And so forgiveness is about collapsing in real time, collapsing into the root of the pained perception. What one holds to the active presence of love, as this particular passage reflects as produced in glory, produced out of a live process of absolute present love, and do your work. That's what it takes. So that's what we're here to support. That's what we're here to be part of, and that's what we're here to do our absolute best. You know, Julie's out there working on it with people, Dr. Tim, Jeannie, Michelle, Susan, all the teachers that are doing it. John called yesterday. He's on it. He's rocking. And each person who takes that and enters into, and it's a skill. It takes time. It takes practice. A skill to develop, to step into that live process and watch what happens. It's absolutely amazing. So honored and delighted that you're here to be part of this conversation. And Jeannie, do you have a hand up in the phone queue or somebody in the chat room? Okay, let's say hello.
It's 417. I think it's Julie in Heartland.
Yes, it is.
Oh, sweet. Hey there, young lady. Welcome. Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, thanks. Well, the reason for my call is I was talking to you about my experience with RA. Is this a good time to share that?
This is a perfect time to share it. That would be awesome.
Okay.
So,
so as you know, everybody, you went up there, and Chuck and Magda went up there, and so I was in the building with Patrick, and we were just kind of talking a little bit, but he said he wanted to rest, and I kind of looked at the clock, and I noticed it was about the time that the service would be happening. So I just, for a moment, just sent love and just wanted to kind of like just tap into the whole thing. And so as I did, I thought, well, I think I'll go outside because Patrick wants to rest, and I'll go outside and do a little yard work. So I was outside, and it was very quiet, and, it's very, natural there. And so then as I'm working, I hear, "Hi, Julie, this is Ari." And I said, "Oh, no, it's not. I'm just making this up." And he goes, "No, it's Ari." And so I said, "Well, how do I know it's Ari?" And, my mind was very much questioning it. So he said, "Well, you'd know me by the bear song." I said, "Well, everybody would know you about the bear song." And so then he said, "Well, you know you about the kitchen and, give me the back of your hand." I go, "Well, everybody know that too." And then he said two more things. And then, I just, felt it was Ari. I mean, I just was experiencing Ari communicating with me. And then he said, "I'm here to help heal Patrick's heart." No, he didn't say that. He said, "I'm here to heal Patrick's heart."
Sweet.
And with that, he was gone. And it was, like I said, it's the same time as you had the service, or were having the service. So I felt very blessed. But, if you take back, look back in time, Patrick and Ari and myself were often in the kitchen together. And Ari would love Patrick's knives because they were always sharp. And so Patrick would lend him his knives when he was working in the kitchen and wanted to do nori rolls or different things. And so sometimes in the summer, Ari would use a lot of Patrick's knives. So they made a really good connection. And, Ari was very fond of him. And Patrick also fond of Ari. And so, it was kind of a real sweet energy. And the reason my doubt, it was exactly like when I work with people and, I'm intuiting, different things. It was exactly the same. It's just that it was a surprise. The scenario was not the same like when I'm just working with somebody. It was, sort of a little bit like out of context in a way when Ari came. But it was the same energy, the same love, same presence, which, I attribute to being God, So I wanted to share that. It was like, the things I've experienced with my mom, when she left,
Right.
if you remember, after I woke up and she had already left her body, but then I received the message, feel the energy, and then this energy went like through my form. And then the communication was, "That's your mom in her true form." And then remember, I was holding my dad's hands when he left, and then I kept asking, "Where are you, Dad?" And Dad, Dad wasn't communicating. And then all of a sudden, I started feeling that energy in my heart and increase. Then my dad communicated with me, just like with Ari, just like with intuition, as "I'm in your heart." So it was just I felt like, we have the belief that Ari's not around, but Ari's around.
Yeah.
And on just another vibrational form, and just as well as my mom and dad, I felt blessed by Ari's presence. And I just wanted to share that with you because I did text you and let you know what happened. And I also didn't communicate it right away with Patrick. I said, well, it could have been part of my doubting Thomas mind, but, again, I know for a moment there I was surprised, but I thought, well, I'll observe Patrick and see what happens. And what I have observed is energetically, he is doing better. He's more getting up, doing things on his own, being more independent. He's still, as you know, doing some things this week that are, because he's going to have that dye test tomorrow, and that's going to be in his heart. And, he's still doing things that are, because they were questioning the integrity of his heart. But I noticed his spirit was different, his energetic level. And then I did share it with him, which he was very touched by,
Well, I hold the space that tomorrow when he goes for that test, when they initiate it and they start doing, which I know he doesn't particularly want to die in his heart, that when they initiate it, they're going to go, oh, why are we even doing this? Everything's perfect. Everything's fine. And so I hold the space that Ari brought that energy. I was actually thinking about him this morning. I was just getting out of the shower and just having this thought of appreciation for Ari and how deeply he was always there for Heartland, just so totally, completely, always 100% there. It's just, I mean, it wasn't that there weren't times when stuff was up and there were challenges. Of course, there were, but how he was just there and part of that community so deeply. And I don't know if you were in the room when Ari, you had mentioned in the text that you sent the sassafras story. I don't know if you were in the room, but Ari shared that again this year at the intensive with people about Ari's first meeting with Patrick when he was off in the woods and looking like a wild man. He had just come off of all of his meds and was out in the woods on his own, just kind of gathering some roots and berries. And he brought in, what Ari perceived as a tree. And for those who aren't familiar with this story, he had this big branch in his hand. He said, "Here," and he gave it to Ari. He's like, "What am I supposed to do with this?" And sassafras root, make us some sassafras tea. And then they went, together and made sassafras tea. And that was kind of their initial bonding. And, whenever Ari shares that story, he shares that initially he was frightened by Patrick's presence with this bush in his hand. So it's just so sweet to tap into that. And I hold the space that Ari's or Patrick's moving to the next level with that whole heart issue.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and you're right. I remember Ari looking at me. He goes, we were talking about it this summer too, and he goes, "What in the heck am I going to do with that thing?" But Patrick taught him. Oh, it was good. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah. And I look forward to the message that I got today when he was kind of tapped in and felt his energy was. He's going to be there guiding the kitchen anyway, even though he's not physically present. Avery was a young woman who was at the intensives that we did 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago down in North Carolina. And Susan Darnell was telling me that she had spoken with Avery and that Avery's interested in coming and doing the kitchen. And Ari really did some deep training with her. So I would expect that training will continue. And then who knows, Brad, I suspect, might be, with the training he's gotten from Ari over 2 summers, be part of the kitchen next year. We'll just see how it all unfolds.
Right. And, Ari did tell me he was planning on hanging around. He used exactly those words. He goes, I'm planning on hanging around.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, we hold the space for him and appreciate his contributions to Heartland for so many years, 23 years of really deep contribution. And we're here to hold the space for you, dear Ari, for your eternal journey. We appreciate you. We bless you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got lots of memories with Ari. Even down at the lake, remember we'd go down there and we'd be singing, and sometimes we'd go at night. We'd be in the rafts, and
there was a bear.
Yeah, but it was so beautiful because you see all the stars and everything. But yeah, lots of fun memories.
Yeah,
so yeah, I just
sure.
I felt very blessed that he was there. And that we were able to tap into each other. Are you still there?
That's awesome, yes. And thank you for sharing it. We appreciate it. It's awesome. I had talked with Nancy Dock, and she had some similar visitation. I don't know if she might happen to be out there, but perhaps if she is, she'd put her hand up and she'd share with us too. And she's had some messages from Ari since he passed.
Oh, that's fantastic. I know they worked so well in the kitchen. It was phenomenal. She was just able to, tap into what he needed, and she goes, "I'll get that, Ari." It was just wonderful watching the 3 of them. Brad was part of it that year. But,
sure.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I hope Nancy is. But I do hope she shares.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know if she'll be available on the show today or not. If she is, she's probably putting her hand up right now. Otherwise, when she has the chance to get to the show, she'll be sharing it with us.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. And tell Patrick we are holding the space, holding him in our hearts as his heart heals and he gets rocking forward.
All right. Thank you very much. You have a good day.
Much appreciation. Lots of love and blessings. All right. You too.
You too. Bye-bye.
Sweet.
We do have a hand up. It's not Nancy, but it is area code 205. You're on the air. Who do we have?
This is Deborah from Alabama.
Well, hey there, young lady. Welcome.
How are you today?
What's on your mind today? I am doing well. I'm in a little bit of a healing crisis. My throat's a little froggy, but otherwise I'm excited about what's happening and moving forward, and really delighted that Susan introduced you to the work, that we get to have these conversations. So what's on your mind today?
Well, you and I had spoken. I spoke with the program last week about some things that I was dealing with pre-ancestors, I guess. And, and it's weird because I do believe that energy from the past definitely touches the energy of people that are present, especially family members, bad and good,
for sure,
ugly and beautiful, Yep. I've really strongly felt nudgings from my great-grandmother. I didn't know my great-grandmother. I didn't even know my grandfather. Both passed a long time before I was ever thought about, But it's very strange that I feel this inclination to write a story about my grandfather. It was initially supposed to be a story about my great-grandmother. And she's involved in this story, but for some reason, it's coming out as more of his angle, his need, and you had touched on the fact that you thought that he might need healing, because of, he had a very abused childhood and a very abusive adulthood toward his kids, which would have been my father and Susan's father as well, because we are first cousins. Our dads were brothers, but I'm curious as to how you feel the negative things that lurk in our DNA, like the things that are passed from generation to generation. And I realize, that you believe that canceling out, cleaning out the lines, that type of thing also affects the ancestors as well as our descendants. It's, from the beginning to the end is what I'm understanding. If the negative comes forward and is feeling like, a story needs to be told, maybe there is more to the negativity as far as, I guess, what produced the negativity, and maybe he wasn't as he was perceived.
Right. Well, my take would be
it's almost like his mother is saying, this is my kid, and you're really, you're getting the stories of the negativity, but there was more to him that met the eye. And I need that story to be told. And it's really strange that it's almost like the same inclination, when we were kids back in the day, and we would be sitting in the front seat, and our parents would like slam on the brakes, and they would always throw the arm across, what I'm saying, to protect the child from going through the windshield. I'm feeling the same mother energy, like a mother to a mother, because I'm a mother as well, of a son that pretty much transgressed. And it's like she's trying to reach out to me to make me know that her son, my grandfather, was not always maybe that way, or not necessarily the person that knew him to be, if that makes any sense.
She knew him differently. Well, and if you bring through that story from her, it may be her that's actually writing it through you, that's offering this information. And as you do that, my take would be, if it triggers any negativity for you, any of that genetic stuff, as you let that come forward and forgive it, you're opening the energy window for his healing and her story to come through clearer and deeper, and bringing the presence of love. The whole essence, as I said a few minutes ago in my opening remarks, is that it's really clear to me that what has to happen is a live process where the trauma, the drama, the pain, whatever it is, has to come up in its real form not just this intellectual, oh yeah, I remember when I was a kid somebody beat my butt. No, it's not that. It's, God, I can remember when I was there and I could just feel that belt tearing into my flesh. That energy comes forward, and when simultaneously there's the presence of active love. And maybe great-grandmother's chosen you to tell this story because you're aware of the healing process and can bring that healing to the generations that she so desperately wants to bring forward. So that's a pretty honorable place to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really weird because, like I said, I never felt any kind of inclination. I actually felt a drawing toward her because I started going through ancestry. I also started going through family, through the DNA, find a grave. I also did the DNA test. And we started, kind of reaching back through the generations. And, my dad told a lot of stories about my grandfather as well as his great-grandmother, who had also passed before my dad was even born because she died so very young. But he had heard stories of her. There was a definite love from the mother to the son, which would have been my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather was very abusive. My grandmother was very protective of my grandfather, but my grandfather ended up being abusive as well. But it's like there's more to this story than is meeting the eye, and it's just almost ripping me apart to try to get this out on paper. Because it's like I want to, I don't want to look at my grandfather as being like an abusive SOB, pardon the French. But on the other hand, I've got to bring the good and the bad and the ugly and the beautiful all to the forefront because that's his story. That's her story. And, I can't, it's part of my history. I mean, how am I supposed to honor my ancestors, per se, if I don't tell the truth?
Right. And here's the key. When I talked about that passage from the scriptures where it speaks about, it was done in glory, is that when you do this and you bring this whole story forward as is you being the conscious, active presence of love, then you become your light, your presence of love becomes the live energy that creates the healing process for everybody in the generations to be freed from those abusive dynamics and to strengthen the presence of love that grandmother obviously is, or great-grandmother, and great-grandfather. Grandfather is as that presence of love, and that she wants to see come forward. So, just be in that live process. And, I know that Susan would be delighted to be there. And, of course, we're here 5 days a week to support you if any hiccups come forward, things that you can't handle as you do that. Then we're here to support you and to bring that all to the presence of love.
Right. I don't have any problem with actually, because some of this is things that are fictionalized in my mind because I did not know these people. And some of it is based on fact from stories that I've heard from, my dad and my uncle, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing about it, I've also received I've met some cousins met some cousins online that are my first cousins, other brothers' children, per se, from the same grandfather, that they have a perception and a memory of a grandfather that, they would go to the general store and he would, it would see him once every 2 to 3 years and he would hand them a bag of candy and they thought he was great. So for any type of negativity, their dad never passed any stories on to them about the abuse. They were always just told, oh, we grew up rough. My dad was rough. It was just that day and time, et cetera, which my father went into specifics. And they're having a really hard time with any type of negative connotation coming back about my grandfather or my great-grandfather. So, and I'm not trying to strip away the layers, and I'm not trying to say, oh, they were horrible people. Exact opposite. I want to show them as being human. I want to actually be able to bring these people forth in this story and be able to give them their time, give them their 15 minutes of fame, per se, to let them know that they are human. They did have their faults. They might, it might have been genetics. It might have been the circumstances they were raised in. It might have been the time. that people did not, they thought of children as chattel or farmhands or whatever. A lot of it
Right.
could have been the circumstances they were raised in. But I'm trying to bring to light the fact that these people are the people we came from. The good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, whatever, they are all in our genetics, and they're all in our line. And, that doesn't
Exactly.
mean that we have to continue with this. My dad did not. My dad broke the mold as far as, he never abused us. My uncle was never abusive toward my cousin Susan. So, I mean, they were stern, don't get me wrong. They were very stern. It was very hard for them to show emotion or love because that was not shown to them. But we knew they cared
Right.
about us because they took care of us. That's
Yeah.
the way they knew how to show love. And so that's what I'm trying to bring to the forefront is that these people were human.
Powerful. Sweet. Well, we hold the space and support you. It's a very powerful assignment you've been given by your great-grandmother. That's pretty nice.
Yes, it is. It's very overwhelming at times, I can tell you.
And
apparently
you might want to step in.
The story.
All right. Well, and you might want to do some wake-up sheets around that, when you said it's tearing you apart, that you
Right.
whatever those things are that are surfacing for you, that you apply forgiveness to those so that you are freed of those, and that story will come through in deeper clarity and deeper truth and create deeper layers and levels of healing for everybody in the bloodline, cousins that are alive and rocking in the world and maybe doing some of their own abusive actions, open the space for that healing, and all of a sudden they have a change of heart, they have a change of mind, because it's all based, we started the show out with this idea of resonance and gravity, and that the motion that's created, and as you bring a healing, as you bring a live transmutation of that old pained energy forward in your world, you make it available to all of them energetically. It doesn't matter where they are on the planet. There's nothing we know of. If there's somebody standing on the exact opposite side of the earth from you that's linked to that energy that's resonating from your mind, that energy passes through everything that is so-called physical. There's nothing we know that can stop that high energy wave except another set of brain cells in tune with it. So as you bring that forward and you do that work of what's being torn up in you and heal that, you open the space for everybody in the bloodline to do the same.
I completely believe that.
So we join you in it and support you.
I appreciate it. And I will definitely keep you attuned of what's going on.
I'll look forward to reading the story when you're complete with it.
That sounds good. And I appreciate you listening to me today. Thank you.
Delighted and honored. Glad to be here to support
Bye-bye.
you. Blessings. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks.
All right. Sweet. So, Jeannie, do we have anybody else in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
No, everything is quiet. So if someone presses 1, you're first in line. We've got 5 minutes.
Time for plenty of conversation. Well, 5 minutes of conversation. We can cover some deep issues in 5 minutes. It's amazing how quickly healing happens, and how blessed we are to have these tools, and this understanding in this community. I just deeply, deeply appreciate this community and the fact that that I get to do what I get to do, that we get to do what we're doing. It's just awesome. And, I got back home here, just a few days ago after being gone for almost 3 months with the intensives. And Aria Rain, our littlest co-host who isn't here today, actually today is her birthday, her 1 year of circling the sun today. And when I got back home, I got about maybe 3 minutes of standoffishness. Jeannie's holding her and goes to hand her to me, and she turns back and is like pushing me away. And after about 3 minutes, I became the feature of the day. It was awesome. She just kept coming to me, and I got 5 kisses out of her, just voluntary, just right out there. So blessed. So blessed to be aware of this space and to realize that having a child isn't about taking care of a child or raising a child. Having a child is about being the presence of love that sees them as who they are as love, and through resonance helps to draw them into their form. And of course, when I give that gift to her, I get to receive it. I wish I'd understood that more deeply when my children were children, but I didn't. And so there's a new level of that for me that's a big blessing in my life. And I just need to look at her face and smiles. Just fill the space. Go ahead, Jeannie.
We have a hand up. We're down to 3 minutes.
Oh, great.
Area code 808. You're on the air.
Hi, it's Roma. I just wanted to add. Hi. I was listening to that last interchange with your last caller, and I just wanted to add something that I'm very, very aware of, which is that every single human being on this planet was born an innocent baby, in an innocent newborn. You know, like we have in that particular. I forget right now which number it is, but toward the middle of the worksheet, we refer to that newborn energy. And that in my experience, and because I tend to remember what I perceive as past lives, it has taken me a long time to actually arrive at the actual experience of feeling like a brand new newborn, because when I came into incarnation in this particular lifetime, I was still carrying the resonance, the energy field of some of the other past lives. So, but the truth is that every newborn baby is born innocent, and my point is that sometimes we're carrying difficult energies from other lifetimes, but even those difficult energies from other lifetimes can be completely resolved and healed. And we just have to keep that image of that innocent newborn energy. I think that's that's one of my favorite parts of the worksheet is right there. Oh, yeah. I'm so glad
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to just encourage our writer. What is her name? Susan's cousin?
Deborah.
I forget her name. Anyway,
Deborah.
she was on the call last time I was on the call, so I just wanted to she followed me last time, so I'm following her this time.
Cool.
And just with that little energy of encouragement that no one is fundamentally evil. There is no such thing. And that we pick up energies, we begin to act them out, but truth is we're all innocent newborns. So anyway, that's it.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when Yeshua says in order to live you've got to die, that self that's born of being off the mark and is not created as our essential nature, simply needs to be let loose of, simply needs forgiveness, the removal of that non-being self, and the return to the truth of who we are. Yes, and I join you in that and seeing that in every being on the planet and every being that's ever existed, including those that one might categorize as the most evil, and remembering that the word evil is an archery term that simply means you miss a target. That's all. It isn't all this Greek hogwash about demons, and it's just off the mark. That whole demon game is just a silly fantasy of Greek minds. So we'll let go of it and carry forward as love. And have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. For blessings.